Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another Mosaic Society video. I'm Rosemary, and then we have,
T. Marie.
Shreya.
we are going to be talking about generational divide. And just a quick overview before we go into the conversation, so we're all coming from the same perspective. Generations are a group of people who were born around the same time period, who share similar cultural experiences, historical events, social influences, and because of those experiences, it shapes their values and behaviors and perceptions of the world. While each birth year has a range for their generation, each generation is often defined by very specific shared moments and trends they grew up with, and oftentimes you can blend between generations depending. So, for example, T. Marie is Gen Z, but she has millennial insights because she grew up with two older brothers who are millennials, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like, okay. And then I would consider myself a zillennial, which is this term that was coined. I swear I saw it on a TED Talk, but when I looked it up, it said it was like a social term that people came up with on Tumblr and Twitter and stuff. But I would categorize myself as a zillennial, which is someone who's on the cusp of Gen Z and millennials. And then Shreya would also categorize herself as a zillennial, but she says cusp of Gen Z and millennial. Correct. Okay, do we want to give our birth years so people like know exactly where?
Must we?
Sure. Oh.
What did you say?
She said, must we?
Just so people know exactly where, because like we're defining it ourselves like zillennial birth or zillennial whatever, but it could be I could say I'm a zillennial and be 2005 and people would be like no. But okay. I also for the birth year specifically, I was born in 2000.
Oh, one baby.
97.
97.
97.
Hey, I'm proud to be a 97. Okay, I like it. I like being in the
It's a
90s.
it's a good year, I'm not gonna
It
lie. And we're
is.
all within 5 years of each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It works. With that said, I'm gonna let you guys choose. Do you want to go into questions or I have a list of quick little things that define each generation?
Hmm. Let's hear
Let's
that.
hear it.
That so, well, let me start with boomers because they started. So baby boomers are from 1946 to 1964. Their generation, their values, perceptions are post-war optimism, pre-digital childhood, so like black and white TV, rotary phones, handwritten letters, workforce identity, their loyalty to employers, cultural anchors like the Beatles, Woodstock, classic rock, all that, and then financial landscape. So benefited from more cheaper housing and cheaper education as well. For millennials, the defining characteristics. Also, this is from ChatGPT. Okay, this is what ChatGPT put together. Just a quick
Okay.
little. I didn't sit here watching 10 documentaries on it. But I do agree with these. Millennials, they're tech pioneers, so they grew up with the dial-up internet, transition to smartphones, like they've always had to adapt. They were the social media starters, even though Gen Z is known as like the social media generation. Millennials were the social media starters. So think of like MySpace and the first wave of Facebook, stuff like that. Pop culture markers like Harry Potter, Friends, The Office. There's a lot of stuff within pop culture now that started with the millennials. And then economic challenges, I'm sure we'll talk about, and then experiential focus. So they like to experience many things. They have side hustles, value travel, all this stuff. Now, for Gen Z, which technically we're all in technically, we're digital natives. So we have this like digital narrative with ourselves from social media, smartphones. We also have Wi-Fi that help us, all this stuff. We're hyper connected, social media narrative. Diversity and inclusion. We're more racially diverse and socially progressive and open to change than the generations before. Climate and activism. So we're known for youth-led social movements, which I'm sure we'll also talk about. And then pop culture mix. So we're the streaming first gen, and we have memes as communications, and we can be like, oh, I really want to go watch Game of Thrones, and you're just like, where's Game of Thrones? HBO. Go to HBO and watch it. Like we have easy access to a lot more. So those were some quick little facts about each generation. But to start, let's talk about generational.
Wait,
The
wait, hold on. We missed out a very key generation, Generation X.
okay, I missed out on Gen X as well. So let's see. Key characteristics of Gen X. All right, some core traits of Gen X is independent and self-reliant. Facts. Very skeptical and pragmatic. So, oh yeah, they did have a lot of political scandals. I didn't even realize that. They had a lot of political scandals, so that came with a lot of criticism and skepticism. They're very adaptable, so they're pre-digital. They're pre-digital, but also experience part of the digital world in their transformative years. And then they're comfortable. That makes them comfortable with old and new technologies. They are work-life balance seekers, so they value career success, but also family life. They're entrepreneurial. I would agree with that. And then they are culturally diverse and media savvy. They witnessed the rise of hip hop, grunge, and global pop culture. Okay, so baby boomers, Gen X, millennials, Gen Z, and then Gen A, which I didn't do a quick tap on, but it's fine. We'll get to them.
They're infants right now, right? Are they like old enough to have a say? I have no idea.
I
No,
think
It's
they're
all
like
they're
in
in
just so
school.
elementary
early.
and middle
Yeah,
school.
in
Yeah.
middle.
Really young, really, really young. Okay.
I feel like we're still learning about Gen A, so we'll see. And we talked about how we didn't have as much experience with Gen A. I know you did too, but anyway, to start, let's talk about our own personal, I guess, experiences with generation, like our identity when it comes to what generation we live in, and then how those generational divides show up in our family and life.
Um, First off, I really love this topic because I think it's so interesting. And as Rose was like mentioning like all the different generations, I have like a lot of those within like my immediate household. So like my dad's a baby boomer, my mom is Gen X, my oldest brother is a millennial. My middle brother, he's like a zillennial, and then I'm Gen Z. And so I think that I've noticed like small things growing up where there was just like a difference in values between like my parents and what they would try to not instill in us, but things that they would like believe in and try to like teach us about versus what we would kind of see reflected in like modern society. So it would kind of be like, eh, not everybody else isn't really doing that, but it's like still from their time, you know, what they would do and what was regular. So one of the and they're like small things. So like I have a bunch. So texting versus calling. I also think this is just like a personal preference as well. But like my dad has had to say like several times, like, no, like don't just text them, pick up the phone and call them. And I'm just like my little Gen Z stuff, like, oh, I'd rather text. But also like this is more so for my brothers, where like taking off your hat when you're indoors. Like my dad, bald headed man, love him, but he's quick to be like, take your hats off, take it. Like it's what's respectful. You don't wear hats indoors. Another thing is like attitudes to like hairstyles. My
Hmm.
mom, you will never see me as long as my mother is paying for my hair. You will not see a natural hair color in my head. She only likes like black, browns, and then maybe I've gotten away with like a honey blonde a little bit. But she really does not like even like reds. And I just want like that burgundy color, and she's like, mm-mm. My dad really doesn't like, well, he doesn't prefer when we wear like unnatural hair, like not unnatural, but like weaves. He prefers when me and my mom have more natural looking hairstyles. That's just his preference. We gonna wear what we want to wear, but still, you know, that's just a preference he has. Also, wearing, I asked both of my parents about this because I really wanted to hear their perspectives. My mom said, I don't like when people wear pajamas out in public. She said, back in the day, people used to go to the grocery store in suits and nice little dresses and a little pump, maybe. So I thought that was really interesting. And then also the idea of like church attire, like Sunday's best, kind of going away as well. And then the last thing they mentioned is child discipline. She said my parents were like the difference between a belt versus like a timeout chair. And they kept on going on about how you and your brothers had it so easy. We would put you on timeout, da 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 da. So I thought that was interesting.
We
Funny point to add, timeout is now illegal in some countries.
Timeout is illegal.
In some countries, and not for parents, but for let's say early child development practitioners, basically teachers and caretakers. They can't give children
oh
timeout even if they're
yeah.
biting people, biting other kids, or throwing food, or being a monster in general. So
So what can they do? because I felt like time
Gentle
out.
hands, gentle hands, gentle hands.
Nah,
I've heard that.
mm,
I've heard that a little bit. Yeah.
I was like,
What about you,
okay.
Shreya?
Um,
Sorry.
so in case of my parents and my family, I think it's important to understand that the cultural and societal progression was different in India as compared to the United States. So my dad was born in the 60s and my mom in the 70s. They have a significant age gap as well. So I think they are a different generation altogether. My dad is a boomer, but he's like a cusp like me, 65, 64 born. Wow, I got that wrong. 64 born. So he's right in between two generations. And my mother comes towards the later end of, she's like proper Gen X. So I can see differences in, let's say, how they spend money, how they
Mm,
view money, how they view lifestyle choices. There was an emphasis on frugality when they were growing up. There was a saving culture, which changed to a spending culture as we liberalized our economy in the 90s. Right up until that point, you only spend as much as you have. The idea of credit cards didn't exist. So people saved. There was very little technology. And I think the first time my dad used a computer was when he started working in the 80s. That is after he finished his bachelor's degree. Until that point, he probably didn't have all that much access to it. I never asked my mom, so I don't know when she had access. But I think it wasn't until she was in her teens as well, late teens as well. So there is this difference in how they view um, how much you should be spending when you're earning. Live within your means was their primary concept. Things like how you dress also becomes really important. So there was a lot more tolerance towards relatives and people when
yeah.
in their generation than it is in my than I have for people around me. I mean, I'd love to have them over, but I wouldn't put up with as much as my parents put up with.
mm,
Hmm.
It's just the idea of family and tradition is very core, but they're also a generation that liberalized and is more progressive now.
Hmm.
As in with time they've gotten more progressive. Not saying that family and tradition is regressive, not to say that, but they're more open to being to accepting new ideas with a little resistance here and there. So I think that's another big difference that I see. I think the biggest fights that we have are about how I dress. They don't like it when I wear pajamas outside. My dad thinks it's a sin. He's really embarrassed when I don't have an ironed shirt on. My mother hates it when I don't do my hair properly or when I don't do my face or if I don't wear like if I don't look presentable. I think it's very important to them that I look presentable all the time. When you attend interviews, my dad has this thing where he'd polish your shoes and he'd basically iron your shirt and he'd be like, you need to wear these pants, you need to look really professional. And my cousin was going for this IT job interview and he's like, nobody really cares. Like people wear shorts to office. My dad's like, no, 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 that's not professional. You gotta wear the suit. You gotta wear a
Shorts is
tie.
crazy. Shorts is crazy.
He's like, you have to shave. You have to look clean. You have to have a short haircut. Why do you look like Jackie Chan from, the Flying Dragon or something? And I'm like, okay. So things like this. I think that's where the biggest issues are. And I think when I say Jackie Chan from the Flying Dragon, I think he's talking about the specific haircut. That's a,
Hmm.
so
Interesting.
he does not like long hair on men. He hates beards on men for some reason. He thinks it's unkempt and it's very scraggy. He does not like it. He thinks it's a bad look. He's one of those mustache types, you know? The 80s. Yeah. I love my parents. Oh, I love talking about them.
I'm crying.
Yeah.
For me, I think I didn't ask my parents. I honestly did forget, not gonna lie. But I feel like my parents and I have had enough conversations where I can understand where they're coming from. So my parents, where I grew up in a house, my dad's a boomer, but he's like almost on the cusp of boomer Gen X. My mom is Gen X, and then me and my sisters are, well, technically, me and all my sisters are all born in Gen Z, like that time frame. But me and my older sister Fatu, we're like Zillennials. We had a way different childhood than my three younger sisters who are firmly planted in Gen Z, I would say, especially the youngest one. The way she talks, I don't get it sometimes. Um, but I feel like the generational divide within my house, it was like generational divide between my sisters and my parent, like us and my parents, and the generational divide between like the older sisters and the younger sisters. I feel like that's how it showed up. With my parents and us, I can only speak to me, I'm not going to speak for my sisters. With my parents and me, I feel like most of the generational divide had to deal more so with like religion, spirituality. Well, not really, hold on. Let me make it more broad. It had to deal with cultural generational divides and then gender roles when it comes to generational divides. I think that for my mom, my dad, in a way, I don't fully understand gender roles and his perception with generational divides because I have no brothers. And my dad's also the type of person who's like, who cares what anyone else thinks? Just do what you want, right? Like he'd be the type of person if I want to go to school looking raggedy and my mom's like, no, go change. He'd be like, leave her alone. Let her do what she wants, right? So I don't really understand like how that has like if there's a generational divide there. But I have heard him say stuff about like he says he doesn't like if he had a son, sometimes we'll see like a guy out and about with some really messy hair and long hair, and he'll be like, if that was my son, I'd just take scissors to it. And I'd be like, what? And we would talk about it, and basically his stance is you can do what you want and you can have your hair how you want, but you need to be clean. Like you can't just show up with raggedy hair. Like your hair needs to be put together. If you take care of it, that's fine. But if you don't take care of it, I don't like that. Um, which fair, but also didn't have brothers, so I don't know how that played out. With my mom and us, there was a lot more of a gender roles divide and cultural divide there, especially because like with us being Muslim and from Senegal, I think gender roles are more rigid in those cultures. And then being a third culture kid, being raised in America, America's more free, I would say. And so growing up, there's a lot of divide there with my mom. I think she does a good job just having courage and letting us explore what we want to explore. But there's certain things she finds like a little weird. Like she doesn't like when we have too long of hair. Like she doesn't get that. Um, she also doesn't like when we go out in pajamas. She's let it go now. Like she doesn't care anymore. But at first she's like, oh, just get dressed. She doesn't like her big thing is like when people are over, like we have to serve them. Like we have to give them something to drink and give them some food and then make sure we say hi and then make sure we're sitting quietly. Like those kind of cultural divides, generationally speaking, I see. Um, and then religiously and spiritually speaking, I think this might just be for me because I am really into spirituality and religion. I feel like again, my parents had a more rigid sense of spirituality and religion, but also a loose one. Like I feel like my parents do have a very open-minded understanding of how religion is expressed and practiced, but also this idea of like individualism. Like your religion is yours, how you practice it. Who am I to judge? I'm not God. But it all there's certain things where it's like very specific and it's like, no, you're not supposed to do that. And I'm like, but I'm an individual. This is how I express myself. So I feel like that's in a divide. It's nothing too bad, but yeah, I'm gonna stop there. With my sisters, it's still a divide, but it's not as bad. Like we're just like the way my sisters text their bosses is crazy to us. They'll be like, hey, can't come to work today. Or like um the way they're always like the youngest is always on the phone with her friends. They're always on FaceTime. Always on FaceTime. Like that's weird to me. Always. Like I walk in the room, she's on FaceTime and she's just talking to me like she's not on the phone. And then I'm like, "Oh, you're on the phone?" without saying anything. And then even the way they like grew up with school too, like the way they I feel like school is taken more seriously for me and my older sister than for them. Like they can get away with a lot more now than we could. And part of that is teachers continuously being under supported and funded, but also they have stuff like ChatGPT too, and they can like take advantage of it. So that's what I think. Yeah, I'm gonna leave it there. But let's segue real quick into the question about key characteristics and values within generations, because we just described our own generational divides within our families, right? And then at the beginning of the podcast, I gave a very quick overview of what characteristics are within generations. But for y'all specifically, what do you feel like are moments that influence each generation from your experiences and the key characteristics and values within those generations?
So I asked my parents like what were specific events that or just things that happened that they felt like influenced them. And so there's some overlap with like what you had already said, but for baby boomer, my dad said like the Vietnam War, like he remembers sitting in front of the TV and like looking to see if who was going to be drafted and everything. And my uncles did fight in Vietnam and everything, so that was something that kind of like was a big impact on his generation, and
Mhm.
also like the glorification of drug culture. He said as well that was like really on the rise.
Mm,
And then for Gen X, my mom said the development of like rap music and like she remembers like all like the Black Power stuff, and then Nixon's impeachment
mhm.
is what she remembers. Yeah.
Oh my God, I want to know her experience with that because that's crazy.
I'll ask her. Do I talk about
Wow.
Gen Z too? My own?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, okay. So, for Gen Z, and I also kind of put Gen Alpha in a little bit just because like they're kind of like experiencing like the after effects of some stuff as well. But like when I think about how Gen Z approaches life and like our attitudes towards certain things. First of all, we're living in very tumultuous times. We really are. Like these are really like it feels like the dark ages sometimes.
Hmm.
Not that other generations didn't go through different things they did as I just like listed a few, but it's like each generation has like unique things that it's like it's uniquely their
Yeah.
experience in the setting and the political climate that they're in. Um and so it's like we've pretty much been here our whole lives. Like most of us don't remember an America and a world pre 9/11. Like we were all like very
Hmm.
young. I was just a few months old. Then we lived through the rise of like the digital age, COVID, the Orange Man in the White House. Like there's just a lot of things that have happened that we as a generation go through. And I feel like the attitude that we have is I feel like we cope through humor a lot. I think that also ties in with like the social media aspect. And I love it, honestly. And it's not like we don't care. It's not like we take everything as a joke, but it's like the world is burning around us and we're just trying to live. You know what I mean? So I
Hmm.
think it's you kind of got to like laugh to stop from like crying or being angry or anxious. And so I think that is just something that I love. I find it therapeutic because I think just laughing, I love laughing personally. So what I think that is a value that we have. And then you also see that with Gen Alpha, but I think it's like the impact of social media as well. Like we kind of take nothing serious.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go right after you because you said a lot of the same stuff as me. Um, for me, I mainly focused on breaking down the characteristics of millennial and Gen Z. And I feel like for millennials grew up in this time that was very exciting with progress. Like there was all these new things going on, but then they had very deep instability. Like thinking about being a millennial, they saw 9/11, like they knew a world pre 9/11. They were there with the 2008 housing crisis. They were there with the increasing racial discrimination in the 90s, the hip hop era, and also a rapid tech growth. Like I feel like as millennials, I'm talking about like people rooted in being a millennial. Um, I feel like they kind of never feel fully secure. Like there's this sense of like even when you achieve something, it can be taken away from you or something crazy is going to happen. Even think about COVID. Like they're a lot older now and at that point they have stable careers, but COVID was a huge deal and I'm sure a lot of them were still like either starting families or in the beginning stages of having families. Like they can never just have something and it makes me feel for them because it's like every time they're like okay, we're calm, something else happens. For Gen Z, I think our default is instability. We grew up post 9/11, there's just always something wrong. We had 9/11, just like millennials, the 2008 housing crisis, school shootings. And I think that climate anxiety, I feel like that was a big one in like middle school and high school, always bringing up stuff about not climate change, global warming. And then we have COVID. and again, I said school shootings, but I guess more so the normalization of school shootings. I feel like we're just like the world's crazy, and this is the world that we live in. And because of that, because that's our default, because we've never had this sense of stability even for a little bit, I feel like we're really outspoken and we don't take, I'm sorry for my language, but we don't take shit. Like we're just not gonna sit there and be like, oh, okay, you're telling us that you're giving us thoughts and prayers when we're being murdered. Oh, okay, let me put together a protest. Let me go and call my congressman. Let me go and run. Like there's a one of the victims from the Florida shooting, the Parkland shooting, he's now a congressman. Like I feel like we're huge activists and we stand up for what we believe in because we haven't been able to have or live in a society where we're just free, where
Mm.
it's just us experiencing life without the pressures of social, economic, political pressure on us, or even fear of our lives. So yeah, we're not willing to accept that this is just the way that it is. We envision this life where we're free and supported and we don't have to live with this anxiety and fear, but then we don't necessarily like we work towards that, but we also don't know what it looks like either. Like we're trying our best. And I feel like millennials, they kind of understand what it looked like before, but they keep getting hit. And it's like I feel I've heard a lot of millennials like they'll say stuff about Gen Z, but I feel like they also are like, oh, thanks to Gen Z, things are moving, right? Thank you for Gen Z for being outspoken, for doing all this stuff. And millennials were the first activists. I will also give them that. They were the ones standing up first. And then we just came in, were outspoken, like I said. So we were like, in your face. Um, but I feel like those were key characteristics and moments that defined the two. I don't really know for I think like for boomers and Gen X, it's different for me because I'm talking about America, but my parents grew up in Senegal. And from what I know, Senegal, not from what I know, from what I understand, Senegal was gained their independence from France in 1960. And then my parents were born, my dad was born in 63 and my mom was born in 71. So they were growing up in this post-colonial time where Senegal is coming together as like its own country, its independent country, and creating these governments and these systems that work for them. I want to say without French influence, but the French still influences them today. So it's different for them because they didn't grow up in America. They just came here in the 90s. And they were more so observers of American culture than the people who partake in them. And me and my sisters are more so people who partake because we were born and raised here. But yeah, their experience is post-colonial, which I actually am really interested to ask them about. But go ahead, Sherry.
Um, I think my family's experience, especially, so we have four generations. What are the people who were born in the 40s? What are they called?
Boomers?
The boomers?
Boomers started being born in 19 like mid 40s, late 40s.
Boomers, baby boomers, I think after World War II, sorry.
Baby boomers was 1946, so I don't know really. Let me look
Right,
up
so whatever
really.
was the generation before that, my grandmother was born in 48 and my grandfather in 40. So
Silent
they were,
generation.
sorry? The
The
Oh,
silent.
silent.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. That makes sense. I think we can
Yeah.
relate to that. They were born in a very different world. My grandparents were born in a very different world. I'm only speaking about my maternal grandparents because I spent a part of my childhood with them, um, and teen years with them. So they represented the silent generation. Then comes my dad, who lived in UAE mostly. So that's a different thing. So boomer slash Gen X. My mother, Gen X. And my aunt, who was 78 born. So she's like a millennial, but also Gen X, something like that. So I got to experience all of this, and as an only child, I was surrounded by adults most of the time. I lived in a retirement colony almost. I was literally the only kid there. The average age was 50 plus in that building. So I think I can see, yeah, so that has influenced the way I think. So I don't think I'm a clear representation of a zillennial or a millennial or even a Gen Z. Uh, but I feel that when I see the way my parents look at their core values, and when I compare it to my grandparents, I think it's pretty much the same. It didn't change all that much. I think uh, they have the same thing as family comes first. Financial
Mm.
stability is absolutely essential, and that's something that you strive for, and ensuring that your kids are educated and well settled, whatever that might mean. These were core values that they had. There were also certain cultural values or faith based values that they retained as integral, because whatever was traditional, cultural, and religious was also essential. But all of this was mixed with a sense of practicality as well. So this was pretty standard up for my parents as well, until maybe they started opening up a little more and dropping things that didn't make sense for them anymore, especially traditional values when it comes to faith, that wasn't very practical. And it matches with the generation social climate that they grew up in. If you think about it, my grandparents grew up in newly independent India. So we were just
Mm.
transitioning out of colonial rule. There was the partition, and then immediately after that, we had wars with China, then we had wars with Pakistan, and so that's the kind of life that they grew up with. My mother still remembers the announcement of emergency in India. Emergency is based, no, not my mother, but my father. Sorry, my father remembers the announcement of emergency, which is basically when the prime minister announced that. Um, all democratic systems were being suspended because she saw a threat. She was losing the elections and she was losing a court case which would invalidate her position as prime minister. So she decided that she's going to call for an emergency. For 2 years, nothing ran. So that's something that they remember. It's a part of that. That as autocratic regime was something that they remembered fresh in their memories. And at this point, India was socialist as well, strictly socialist. So people would really crave for craft cheese that would come in cans from the US. It was
Mm.
like crab cheese, but they were like, ooh, craft cheese. It's fancy. It's like liquid. It's like solid gold in squishy form. So
Ew.
these were things that they these were things that they saw, and they were like, oh, we would never get that. But that's the kind of generation they were in. And then my aunt and uncle who grew up during the liberalization, where people started spending money, where owning a car became something that was a common man or a middle class man's within the middle class man's affordable range, that it was something that was possible for them to dream of. So they grew up in that. So their values were also modern, still sticking to family as core, but they weren't all that tolerant of annoying relatives and of religious practices that made no sense to them. My generation and my aunt and uncles and even my parents' generation, after the election of Modi, has become so much more politically vocal. India is suddenly, everybody's politically
Hmm.
vocal all of a sudden. It used to be cool to say, I don't like politics, I don't care about politics pre 2014. And after that, everybody cares suddenly, everybody has a say. And that was a huge momentous moment because after a very long period of time, did we have a government that came into power with such a huge majority. So I think that was decisive because after that, there were quite a few things that happened. We had the demonetization, then we had something related to Kashmir, and then we decriminalized homosexuality. So this is not connected to Modi, this was the Supreme Court. But these were things that defined us. I don't think the global recession defined me. I was a kid. I was 11 years old when it happened. I just remember a lot of people losing their jobs. It affected my aunt and uncle's generation a lot more than it did mine because I was a kid. But yeah, I think the standard values remain the same. It's just how you view them and who you include in them as family, what you include as essential faith based practices has changed. Gender roles have changed to a certain extent. That's about it.
Hmm. I'm actually really curious because the next question talks about how generational trauma impacts our perspectives of the world. But you said something about, you said the values kind of stay the same, but like the different ways. I'm putting this into my own terms, words, because I can't remember exactly what you said. But you're basically saying the values stay the same, but the ways that we go about expressing those values kind of change from generation to generation, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So like I'm curious because we're talking about like how does generational trauma impact our perspectives of the world and like taking from that perspective, obviously as generations experience new things and express themselves in different ways, the way that we experience generational trauma and express generational trauma and pass it on also changes. So What are your thoughts on that? All of y'all's thoughts. I have the question too, real quick, about is I don't understand if y'all, I know it's a Southern thing. Okay. But do people know what y'all means? Like, is that still like a
You
understanding?
all, yeah.
Yeah, like if I say y'all, it's like understandable. Okay, okay. What do y'all think about? I just didn't know because sometimes I'll say y'all and people are like, and I don't know if it's like they didn't hear me, if they're confused.
Y'all is
They
like
live under a rock.
colloquial.
It's what?
Y'all is like colloquial, like normal language. It's like every day.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, yeah.
That's another generational divide. My mom did not like us having country accents. She said, "You're gonna talk proper, full life person." Okay. Anyway.
Right. So what I've noticed is that when it comes to, in my personal experience, what I've seen is that I think my generation is a lot more open to understanding mental health, a lot more aware about it. Talking to a therapist is not because you're crazy. Doesn't
Mm,
mean that that you're going to the loony bin or something stupid like that. But that's when you open yourself to the idea that, oh, I understand where this is coming from, because you read and you're more aware and you're more self-aware as well. I think the way you process it also changes. I'm not saying everybody in my generation is that way, but I think the word generational trauma, or the phrase generational trauma, will strike a chord with anybody who is aware of what's happening in the world. Let's just
mm,
put it that way. I think they'd be able to understand that. Um, how do I think it personally affects people? I think it helps us build a narrative of what's happened, what's happening. So you end up, it creates a cultural filter almost, if you think about it, in the sense that this is what I believe, this is what my parents' experience was, this was their trauma, you imbibe that, and this is how you view everything that happened and people who were involved in that situation. And how you interact with them also, you develop mechanisms of interacting with people, interacting with certain institutions based on that, or with certain
mm,
family members based on that. It also, it shapes how we see society, shapes how we see certain members of our family, or certain, for example, it if you look at generational trauma from passed down from mother to daughter, or grandmother to mother to daughter, and then you'd be like, okay, so this is how I would see an older woman, or this is how I would see my mother-in-law, this is how I would see someone who is an elderly female, who, or someone my age but in this particular setup, in this particular social setting. I think that's I think that impacts the way you respond to stress-based situations, how you would react, how you would talk to other people in similar situations as well. So it's not just about you imbibing it or taking it down, but also how you pass it along to people around. And when it comes to generational trauma in my family, I feel that, um, not to say that there's a lot of generational trauma in my family or anything of that sort, but whatever I could classify as generational trauma in my family, whenever I see instances of it, because of the fact that I can understand where they're coming from, I feel that you can break the cycle there. And I think my mother's also taken the effort to break the cycle whenever she can, because
mhm,
she was also self aware. It didn't come from the idea that this is generational trauma, so I'm going to break it, but rather the idea that this is what has happened to me. I don't want this to happen to my kid. I don't want this happening to my daughter. So I think there's a break there. And there are certain things that
mm,
she experienced that I probably would never experience. When it comes to my grandmother's era, I feel that obedience, deference was so oppressive, and such a huge aspect of how she had to conduct herself, that she was never able to stand up for herself or for her children or for her loved ones. But that broke with my mother.
Do you want to go to? Do you want me to go?
I can go. Um, so for me, I thought about two very like specific topics. First, my mom is like really into like genealogy. She'll like pour over all these documents. I don't know if it's Ancestry or a different website, but she'll pour over all these documents and these family trees, and she loves like piecing the story together. It's a great hobby. I think it's really cool for her. She uncovers some secrets sometimes, and then she'll tell my grandmother, and she's like, "Let those people rest." But love that for her.
I
And
remember one of it.
yeah,
Your
oh yeah, I
mom,
told you.
Your mom is hilarious.
Yeah. But one of the things that she told me about a concept is the idea of like taking it to the grave, and how that concept had kind of like intermingles with like Black American culture, and how like it's not just about secrets, but it's also about how like generations of families were like sometimes put in situations where they had to hide parts of their stories, whether it was because of slavery or separation or just a different circumstance that would happen, and that makes tracing ancestry like really hard sometimes. But
Hmm.
it ultimately impacts the way that families remember their past, the way that they deal with traumas, and the way that they like seek connections across different generations. So I always thought that that was something that was so fascinating, because there really are like so many things that you would never know that happen because people won't talk about it, and they'll essentially die with the secret, you know? So when you like uncover it, especially through things like genealogy, and you find out things like, oh, these this parent and child were raised as siblings and no one would have ever known certain things like that, you know? So I thought that concept was really interesting. And then on a more personal level, one generational trauma that was kind of like on my dad's side is alcoholism. So there's like a few people on my dad's side of the family who like grew up struggling with alcoholism, and I think my dad saw it mainly with his dad and seeing how he went through it and everything. And my dad was primarily raised by my grandmother, his mother, and I think from that experience that he saw, he kind of had this idea of like, I'm not drinking like that. I don't want to drink. My dad
Hmm.
was very firm in that from that perspective, but also he's a singer, so he cares a lot about his vocal cords. So my dad doesn't drink. My mom also doesn't drink. I haven't actually asked her why, but I feel like she just doesn't really see the point or like it. And
Hmm.
how that has impacted like my immediate family. We didn't really like grow up seeing drinking regularly. We would like when we went to like family events on like my dad's side, and a little bit on my mom's side. Now we do have a wine collection, but those are pretty much just dusty knickknacks in the corner of the kitchen because no one would ever touch them. But it's just interesting because I think our attitudes towards like drinking were influenced by that. Like my brothers, none of us really like engage in like drinking. It's just not something that we see as like normal or like regular. Rose and Trey can attest to the fact that I do drink, but it's like here and there and like socially. And I will normally only drink when I'm around other people who are, and that's only like a glass or two, and if it tastes like
Hmm.
juice and not alcohol. But yeah, like I for me, it's interesting because when I'm normally very like transparent with my parents about like, oh yeah, I went out and I had X, Y, and Z, and my mom's like, okay, be careful. And my dad's like, okay, like make sure you're good, like don't do it too often. And I never do, but it's interesting because that's not always on the top of my mind. Like that alcoholism, like,
Hmm.
oh, it runs on your side on a part of your in a it runs
You got
on a
it.
side of your family, but I think I'm more so from the aspect of like I generally just don't really like it. But yeah, I would think it would be very interesting to ask my brothers if that family history influences how they moved. But yeah, I thought that that was an interesting one that was like kind of personal because it's always been there, but I didn't think of it as like a trauma, but it is like cuz it's a serious
Hmm.
disease and it impacts people.
Hmm. Interessante. Um, yeah, tea sits there with juice every time. Yes. So for me, I feel like generational trauma is a little different. I have two different things. First, I feel like generational trauma between cultures isn't explored enough, maybe, because I'm thinking about it, and this is something I have thought a lot about because I do teach kids about generational trauma. And I don't necessarily have this huge like global identity that has experienced the generational trauma. Like I'm black and slavery existed, and so there's that generational trauma. But I feel really disconnected from it because on one end, when you're talking about slavery in Africa and colonization in Africa, that's its own separate trauma. And then you're talking about slavery in America, and that's its own separate trauma, right? The way that it's been passed down through African Americans and the way that African Americans make sense of being enslaved and kidnapped from their land. And then the way that Africans make sense of being colonized and being kidnapped and basically people taking over their own cultures and cultural erasure, all that. But I feel like for me, because I am a third culture kid and I grew up in America, so I very deeply, I very deeply understand. I can't necessarily fully empathize, but I very deeply understand the African American experience and this idea of like culture, like erasure of culture, like your mom doing all the research on ancestry. I can understand why that's important, but I don't necessarily have that direct connection with it. And then in Senegal, with like gaining independence and mistrust of governments or understanding this aspect of individually feeling secure and strong in who you are, but also having these white people who came in and told generations that they weren't nothing, they needed to assimilate to their culture. That's also something I understand, but I didn't grow up in Senegal, so I don't necessarily have the direct link to those generational traumas. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so a lot of times I think of generational traumas and I feel like I'm just an observer. Like I just see how it plays out and I just see how it affects the people around me more so than it affecting me when it comes to like a major global identity type stuff. So yeah, I don't think I necessarily have a long generational trauma. I think it's more personal though. That's my second thing. I think within family generational trauma is there. I think my parents, I'm not going to say they hid us from a lot of the bad stuff, but if there was no reason for us to know, we didn't know, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Yeah.
remember the first time me and Fatu went to Senegal, my dad was like telling us a lot more about our family and stuff. In my head, I was like, oh, my family's great. Everything's fine. Nothing's wrong. And then we're about to go to Senegal. My dad's like, oh, yeah, this person and this happened and this. And I'm just like, there's a bunch of stuff about my family that I just don't know because A, the only family I have here is my immediate family and then my uncle and my cousin. And then everyone else is either in Europe or in Senegal. And so they grew up with this extended family, understanding how generational traumas work, but I didn't grow up with that. So I didn't understand it, and I'm understanding it now as I get older, and our parents tell us more, and we ask more questions. That was the other thing. I didn't ask that many questions. I literally assumed everything was fine because my parents never said anything. But I will say, like, after going to Senegal a couple times, I think it's really important to talk about how two generational familial traumas blend because there's a very distinct difference between my dad's family and my mom's family. Distinct. You will walk into a room and I'm like, oh, I'm on my dad's side. There's a certain way to be. I'm on my mom's side. There's a certain way to be. Not that it's pressure, but it's just they act different. And I think generational trauma plays a big part in that because I feel like my mom's side of the family had a lot more generational trauma in their generational line than my dad's side. And so I can see in the way that my parents raised us too, like my mom is processing those generational differences and traumas in a way where we don't understand, right? Like she's like expressing it in a way, and I'm like, I don't understand why you're saying this. I don't understand why you're doing it. And going to Senegal, I'm like, oh, that makes a lot more sense. And like meeting my grandparents, meeting my cousins, my aunts, my uncles, like I'm like, oh, that makes more sense. But with my dad not having as much generational trauma, I would say within his family line, it's really distinct how my dad is like usually the voice of reason, where he's like, oh, like let them be, let them experience, let them make mistakes, whatever. And my mom is in a way like I feel like with the generational divide and trauma she experienced, she's trying to prevent us from being hurt. So she's like, oh, don't do this. Oh no, that's not good. Oh, we have to act this way. And so the clash between, not clash, it's not necessarily a negative thing, but the differences between the way that they raise us is something that's really like it just really stands out, especially after meeting both families and seeing how both families act and the experiences of both families. I'm like, whoa, like they have
Yeah.
these generational experiences that are coming together into us. And I feel like we take on more of our dad's mentality and perspective because he was really the voice of reason of like just go experience and explore. But we do also have our mom's like hardness is I guess like my mom's real hard. Like she don't take BS. So we also have that from her to protect us too. So it's weird. I was thinking about it, I was like, wow, it's two different family lines, two different experiences of generational trauma and the way they manifest into me and my sisters. But yeah, that's
Interesting.
me. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I always think about it and I'm just like I don't have that big generational trauma that's been impacted. Like with slavery, the erasure of it, or at least I don't know of it because I wasn't connected to it growing up. I was just isolated from
Mm.
both cultures. So, moving forward, the next question has to focus more on how we deal with generational expectations versus realities. We talked about this in our post grad adulthood life podcast, she said the goalpost keeps moving. And honestly, since you said that, like it's just been stuck in my head. I'm not gonna lie. I keep thinking about how the goalpost keeps moving. We're supposed to be married by 21. You're supposed to be married by 25. Kids, family, house. So how do we deal with those expectations versus realities? And you can answer this in a personal sense or like more so in a global sense, whatever.
So I want to bring up again, like, because I brought up Whoopi Goldberg and how, like, she said, like, her perception of,
Hmm.
like, Gen Z only wants to work, like, 4 hours, but they're expecting, like, the same pay as, like, previous generations and everything. And that overall perception that, like, Gen Z is lazy and doesn't want to, like, work hard for things, well, I do think some of that can be addressed in like a shift of work culture that has happened. That's natural. Like that didn't have anything to do with any one generation. It's like COVID happened and work from home is really regular now. Technology is way more advanced. And it's not that we don't want to work out. It's just like different, you know, but I do understand there is like we also have like social media influencers and I there's still perception on that and everything. And I think sometimes people
Hmm.
generalize little pockets into all of Gen Z, but that's not the case. But I really want to highlight in terms of like the realities that are just different for Gen Z, Gen Alpha, and even like millennials compared to prior generations, like not just in a financial stance, but even social aspects as well. Did y'all know the US birth rate has dropped? I'm kind of like,
Hmm.
period. Because, you know, I think we're dealing with the reality that first of all, kids are expensive, childcare is really expensive. There's a shift in prioritization of career growth for women. And it's led us to an era where it's like, I saw this quote, more women over 40 are pregnant than teenagers for the first time in US history. And I think that's crazy. I honestly think that's a crazy statistic, but it's just the idea that things are different now, and that comes from political climates, that comes from the reality of like the state of the world, and also the economy and how that impacts everything. You could get a
Hmm.
house for like 20K back in like the 60s or something, and then it rose to like maybe the 80K to 100K maybe in like the 90s and early 2000s, and now it's like 200K, but the average like, yearly salary has not gone up. Like we can't, there's literally no way for us to match it in a way that we could still get the house, still get the
Hmm.
car, still have our 401ks looking the way previous generations did at the ages that they were able to achieve that. And so I think grace needs to be extended, because I know that there are probably some things that the greatest generation and the silent generation and baby boomers, they probably went through some similar things where there are expectations placed on them from prior generations. And I just think you got to extend that grace, because it's like you have to understand how different the world is, and the world is constantly
Hmm.
going to change, and all we can do is adapt to that. So I just hope that that is something that is brought up more and advocated more for on behalf of younger generations, because we're really just adapting to a world that is so different and it's vastly changing, and everyone's just holding on for dear life, frankly.
Hmm. Agreed. Do you want to, well, real quick to what you said about it's not possible for us to reach the same goals or milestones that they did at that age. You said that right. Like
Mm-hmm.
I think that's an important part, the last part of like at that age. Sometimes I feel like older generations don't understand that we can still reach those goals that they did, that they think are important. It's just taking us a lot longer because we have a
Yeah.
lot more to deal with. But I also think that the older generation, they had really traumatic experiences that they had to deal with, like Vietnam War, Korean War. Even your
World
dad
War
said it,
One and
World
Two.
War One, the glorification of drugs. Like I feel like they had these really deep systemic political international conflicts and traumas they had to deal with. And so for them, when we're like, wait, slow down, like we have so much going on, like social media influences, and then understanding, like changing, wanting to change our career fields. I feel like for them, it doesn't seem as serious, which I can understand because they have like wars and international conflicts to deal with. But at the same time, sometimes I wish they could understand that
Mm-hmm.
these are our problems. Like this is what we're dealing with at very developmental ages too, dealing with the introduction of social media into our lives and the way that we perceive ourselves and perceive others, the way that we express ourselves and tell our stories. Like all that is shifting and shaping who we are. And for them, it wasn't as internal, I feel. I feel like they had a lot of external traumas that was going on and external experiences. And for
Mm-hmm.
us, all these additions into our lives is making us have more internal conflict. And because of that, it's internal. They can't necessarily see it and see the way it's manifesting until you have like Pew Research Center putting out some type of article with statistics after they did the research. But it's ongoing, so you can't, the research is always changing too. So
Yeah.
that's one thing, because you said at that age, and I feel like that's a really important part. Like we're getting there, it's just taking us longer because we have more internal conflict to deal with.
Absolutely. And similar to what Shreya said earlier about like mental health is more prioritized, I think
Mm-hmm.
that also plays a big role. Like we younger generations protect their peace a bit
Yeah.
more than later generations, and it's just because we understand more about mental health. It's real. It's something that seriously impacts people. And that's
Mm-hmm.
why I love when I hear like later generations say, "Oh, I don't know how I would have like coped growing up with social media," because it shows like some level of empathy and understanding of that is a big
Mm-hmm.
hurdle that they're all just living with and trying to just adapt to and navigate as they grow up. And I love when there's that recognition, because of course there's, again, they went through like a lot of different events that are unique to different generations, and I understand, and those are challenges that a lot of generations had to levy, whatever that situation was. But
Mm-hmm.
just more empathy towards like what younger generations have to go through, because this is our own Nixon impeachment, this is our own Vietnam War. It's different, but this is our hurdle that we have to
Yeah.
deal with.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you guys actually, by and large. Um, I do agree that people today value their peace a lot more. I also feel that when you compare us to Gen X and millennials, their work life, they weren't working more and earning less. We're working more, we're expected to work more and earn less for the same work that we're doing. And it's become a
Mm-hmm.
very toxic work culture. Honestly, it's like the less you value yourself, the more you're valued at work.
Mm.
And I think that influence, and like you said, T, that we value our peace more, we preserve our peace more, and I think that plays a role. We don't feel that we're desperate for this particular job. We feel that we have options
Mm-hmm.
available, and that partially comes from, I think it partially comes from the relief, I don't know, the security that you feel. Maybe I feel that it comes from a sense of security that it's all right. If not this, there'll be something else. I don't have to do this all my life or put myself
Mm-hmm.
through this. There is something else. That sense of security that comes with that confidence. I don't think it was there for all the generations. I also feel that a lot of things that are taboo now were mainstream practices for boomers. It was normalized. They were socialized into it. They were socialized into thinking that, oh, getting whipped by the belt is normal. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
having a teacher abuse you is normal. It's normal. All these things that are now considered, oh my God, that's dangerous. It, things that we are protected from largely by society and by family was normalized, and it was, in a way, hardened them. They had
Mm-hmm.
seen war, they had seen, what's that called? Drafting, was it?
Mm-hmm.
Political instability. Some of them, half a section of the population, racism, segregation. That's the history that they were coming from.
Yeah.
That's the history they were living. So for them, this was perhaps something that was not just what they saw in society, but they were experiencing it on a daily basis. It impacted how they viewed their chances, their possibilities, what they could afford, what they could achieve. So I think in that sense, when you put that in perspective, I guess as an older person who's lived through all of that and managed to succeed, maybe I wouldn't see the fact that, hey, things were cheaper back then. Work was easier. Housing prices weren't as bad. Healthcare was more affordable. So maybe those things don't pop up to them immediately. And I think that's
Mm-hmm.
because of the hardened life that they've lived. It wasn't easy. I think the problems that we are titling as external were also pretty internal. It's just that
Mm-hmm.
they were born into it in the sense that right from the get go, they were taught that this is it. This is normal. So honestly, I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't survive
Uh,
their lives.
yeah, I really we had this question for our yearbook when I was a junior or senior, like, oh, what era, like, if you can go back in time, what era would you want to live in? And I said the 60s, the 60s, 70s, right? And everyone's like, "Are you sure you want to go? Because I'm black and all that." Yes, I understand the segregation and all that. But I do think there's something to be said about Gen X and millennials and the way that they advocated for us. Like we always say Gen Z, they're the activists. They're the ones who are going to get up, they're outspoken, they're not going to take nothing from no one. But Gen X and millennials, we do stand on their shoulders and the works that they've done. And I would love to go back and actually experience the different ways that they stood up for themselves based off of the expectations of their generation, right? They didn't have social media the way we did and the way we used it. They had to do the face to face, in person type of activism. They have to do the face to face, in person connections. And so I would really love to be able to witness that and see how those generations were able to move us forward into where we are now. But yeah, I go ahead.
Good.
No, you're good.
No, actually, I find that interesting you say that because, at least from what I've seen of the US or what I've read, which is not a lot, I thought the boomers were the ones who actually took to the streets first. X was actually like, we don't want to protest. They retreated away from the protester lifestyle, the revolutionary lifestyle. It was the boomers who, I mean, the people who were born, who were getting drafted primarily in the 70s, in the 60s and the 70s, who were fighting the second wave of feminism, civil rights. They were the boomers, weren't they?
No, boomers were right after World War II, and so they had this perception of, oh, the war is done, we won, now we can build our family. So most of boomers' generation, from my understanding, it was it wasn't necessarily activism, but it was more so this idea of the American dream and building a family that you can grow old with and they can be successful, have their houses, live in this democracy. That's boomers' ideology. With Gen X, they're the ones who kind of started to question. This is how I kind of internalize it or analyze
Mm.
it. Gen X, they were the ones who were like, oh, American dream, but it doesn't seem like an American dream. Oh, the Vietnam War, what's going on? Why are we here? I think Gen X were the ones questioning it, and they were the ones who started the activism. And then millennials recycled that activism into a way that was working for them. And then Gen Z, again, like we're just really outspoken, and so it's more in your face. Plus, we have social media. But boomers had this like post-war optimism of like we're living the American, at least in America, we're living this American dream. White picket hat or white picket fence in front of a house. That those were boomers in America. And
Yeah,
then
I get
because
that.
it wasn't like okay.
The reason I say this is because after World War II, there was a period where they forced the women back home. They had this entire idea, notion of how a American household should be. That was the 50s. But the boomers are those born post 1946. So they were adults in the 70s. And that's when all this revolution stuff was happening.
Yes, yes, but like
Never mind. We
it
should.
was happen it was just happening with millennials, like the early 20s. It wasn't necessarily the adults who were activists. It was those millennials who were like late teens, early 20s who started becoming activists. And like the era of rock and roll with not millennials, sorry. The era of rock and roll with Gen X. Like those started those little stuff started to break this idea of American dream and America being perfect. And then it went into the activism um, with mainly the Korean War. The Vietnam War also had a lot of activism, but the Korean War like exploded with like millennials. But it wasn't necessarily boomers. Like boomers were more so optimism, and then Gen X were like questioners. They were like, oh, it's not making sense. And then it led into
Interesting.
millennial and Gen X being activists. Um,
Really briefly, I would say I also think like these are overarching like generalizations and there's
yeah.
overlap everywhere. And even like with Rose saying like Gen Z were loud, I would also say we've also settled as well. Like I think there's two sides of every coin with every generation. So there are some who do, some who don't, and then a mix. But yeah.
hmm I also think us being loud is a reflection of social media too.
Yeah.
It's just more
Mm.
out there. But for me, I feel like, and this is just my own personal philosophy, the only answer to dealing with generational expectations versus realities is just to set your own expectations. I think growing up, I had a really big problem with like trying to reach these expectations that were set for me. And then by the time I got to college, I came to this understanding of like, if those aren't expectations that I want, if those expectations don't align with the life that I want for myself, then why am I trying to reach them? So it sounds easier said than done, obviously. I still feel like I've uncovered new expectations that I've been trying to reach that weren't set by me. But the more we do that and the more we analyze, oh, why do I want to be married by this age? Or why do I want this type of house? Or why do I want this type of life? The easier it is for us to reach expectations that we set for ourselves, which is more aligned with our reality than someone else's reality. Very easier said than done, 1000%. But I feel like that's a start. And then from there, we can keep developing. Um, Whew. All right, quickly. Last question. Let's look in the future a little bit. We don't have kids, obviously, but how do you guys think you'll respond to the generational divide within your children?
I have no idea. I think I'm gonna flounder because I don't know how to respond to my generation. I don't know how I'm gonna respond to a generation that is 30 plus years younger than me.
Hmm.
So, but I hope that they are able to, like how T said, she's a Gen Z with millennial insight. I wish this kid would have insight into my generation so that I don't feel completely out of loop. I want them to be well adjusted. But as long as you're living under my roof, I'm going to say this, my rules. You live the way I want you to live. I will listen to you, but my decision sticks. Yeah. So, too bad.
So I think for me, obviously right now I'm a 20 something year old who does not have kids, but maybe like 15 years from now, I would like to think that I would be able to like understand and navigate the generational divides that I would have with my children, because I would like to think that I would understand and remember what it was like for me navigating
Hmm.
generational divides with prior generations. So I would like to think that I would navigate it that way and be open-minded and empathetic when it comes to them. That's
Hmm.
what
Yeah.
I would say.
All of that.
For plus one. For me, I also don't know. I was thinking about it and I was like, I really don't, because even now I see Gen Alphas do stuff and say stuff, and I'm like, that's weird. But that's
I'm
not
like,
weird.
I
That's their
pray for the
norm.
future.
I'm like, I'm literally like, what are they doing? But it's not weird. It's just normal for them and the experiences that they've had.
Yeah.
Um, the one thing I do know is for me, education's really important, and so that's one thing that'll be instilled in my kids no matter what. I don't care if they don't want to learn, they're gonna learn. Because the more you educate yourself, the more you understand. And so in my head, I feel like no matter what, I'll be loving and accepting and all that. But I'll be educating myself so much and reading so many books about it that I'll be able to better understand them. I can't necessarily empathize, but I can sympathize. And then for my kids also, like with them, because you said it, Shreya, like them understanding your generation, your insight, I'll also make sure they understand history because I think understanding history is probably one of the most important subjects. So
Mm-hmm.
and I also love history. So I'll make sure my kids are educated and that I'm educated and whoever my husband is educated. And that way, when we do have these conversations, it's coming from a place of shared knowledge or shared understanding of each other's perspectives. That's how I feel like I'll handle it, but I'm not a mother yet, and I'm not going to be a mother anytime soon. So ask me again in like 15, 20 years and we'll see.
Yeah.
Okay, with that said, we're done with this talking portion. This was a good conversation. I have a lot of questions to ask my parents. But I'm gonna pass it to T for our segment.
Okay, so now we're going to move into our segment for the podcast. We have a fun game today where I'm going to give Rose and Treya either a word or phrase that they will have to guess which generation it's from and what it means. Y'all ready?
Mm-hmm.
I have to share my screen, so I'm not ready, but
Go ahead as soon as you're
there we
ready.
go. Okay, so first slang word. Hold up, I can't see the thing. Okay, first slang word. Drip. We're starting off
Okay,
light.
drip is like, oh, you got drip. Like you're dressed well, you look good, like uh, stuff like that, right?
Yeah, yeah. When you
In
first said
general,
it's
yeah.
like you got drip, I was like, yeah, you used the word.
Which
But yes,
I
generation is
would.
this?
Mm, I don't think it's Gen Z. I feel like millennials came up with it before us, but maybe it is us
make the argument that for a lot of these words, there's arguments because it's like
for
who really
both.
started it. But I would say it's Gen Z millennial. It's
Mm.
in between.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Next one. Ohio.
I don't know, the silent generation?
Oh, maybe it's like
Hi. No?
You
maybe
think
it's
it means like
like
hi?
Hiyo.
actually that's kind of that might work. I was thinking like maybe it's like oh go to Ohio like you're in the middle you're doing nothing like or something like
You're
that. I
probably
don't know.
right.
Like oh it's in Ohio.
Maybe it's like really shit. Does it mean like it's
Yeah.
a terrible,
Is
terrible
that y'all's
thing?
final answer? And you guys think it's Shreya said silent generation?
No, I think
I would
if it's really shit, then it's not the silent generation. It's probably the newest one, whatever they are.
I'm gonna say Gen I'm gonna say Gen
Gen
Mm.
X. Okay. Okay, what is
something
it?
like
Okay.
it.
So Ohio is a description for something that is like strange, chaotic, or weird, and it's Gen Alpha.
I knew it! I knew it! I was right! Yay! Okay, never mind. Okay, cool.
Okay, next one.
Moving on.
Faux shizzle my nizzle. What does this
Gen
mean?
Alpha. Faux shizzle,
I
my
don't
nizzle. You
I've heard
scratch
that when
my
I was
back, I
young.
scratch yours.
I think it's
That's
just
actually
I
that's
think it's
actually a good guess.
okay. I'm gonna assume it's just like a for sure my friend like you're saying this is someone you're close to like for
Is this
sure like
English?
yeah. But I don't think it's Gen Alpha. I could be wrong though. Maybe
It could be the 80s or it could be Gen Alpha. It's not anybody else.
I feel
Okay,
like millennials.
Okay, okay.
Rose is correct.
Ooh.
She actually said it on the nose, like for sure, my friend. And it's
Yeah.
millennials. And I think it was in like one of Snoop's songs, Snoop Dogg's songs or something. So it was popularized through like hip hop culture.
Mm. When I heard it,
Okay.
I thought of the Fresh Prince. I don't know why.
Ah,
So maybe they said
fascism
it on there.
also? Maybe.
Possibly.
This is not English. Okay.
Okay, next. What's the 411?
Ooh,
That's
ooh,
older
80s.
generation. What's the
80s.
information?
Yeah.
I don't know if I'll go for millennials or for
Gen
Gen
X.
X, but it's
It's
definitely
either of the two.
older.
Yeah.
But maybe Gen X because Gen X had to deal more so with the 411, like pressing 411. I feel like millennials had more information accessible. So I'm gonna go with
Phones.
Gen X.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I agree.
You're correct. Gen X.
Okay.
And this is for like
Go Rose!
information, the latest news, or details about something.
Cut my face out when I'm
Yeah.
doing that. I look so lame. Go ahead.
Okay, next. Chop.
Chopped
Ooh, I
liver.
think this is Gen Z, and you look chopped, like you look ugly, like you look not put together. I'm assuming Gen Z, but it could be an earlier generation. Or maybe Gen Alpha. Maybe it's like what's like the 2010s, I feel like, when we started saying chopped. Ooh.
It is Gen Alpha, and it's when if
Mm.
somebody says you look chopped, you need to smack that person because that is an insult.
Because that was like high school era ish.
Mm-hmm.
Why can't they just say you look ugly and be done with it so that everybody understands? Chopped.
Okay,
So
next one.
lazy. Ugh.
Backseat bingo.
This gotta
That's,
be Gen X.
sounds like
Backseat
sex.
bingo. Ooh, maybe. Maybe it's like a, I don't know, you're doing something on the down low or behind someone's
Yeah.
back.
Like something really
Um,
shady.
hmm And I'm thinking like 60s, 70s, so maybe Gen X into millennials, maybe.
That's y'all's final answer?
Okay.
Yeah, I don't
Okay.
have anything else.
Backseat bingo refers to like making out in a car, normally at like
I was
drive-in
close.
theaters, and it's baby boomers.
That
Okay,
tracks.
so it's probably because it was the 60s, so they were born in the 50s. So it makes sense. Right?
Like they were
It makes
teenagers
sense.
in the
Baby
60s.
boomers.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Next one.
Okay, also we may get the term wrong, but just go if we mention a decade and the decade is right, give it to us. Okay.
I
I
didn't know we
wasn't
were
like
keeping
keeping
score.
score. I wasn't keeping score.
Yeah, but no, still, I'm keeping. I'm not keeping score, but I like
Okay.
the gratification.
Okay.
I'm crying.
Standing,
Standing
standing on
on business.
business.
That's recent. Well,
Really, they're
actually,
using full words.
standing on business is not, I'm saying it's recent in the sense that we still use that
Oh,
term,
okay.
but maybe it was millennials who came up with, oh no, I'm standing on business. I'm gonna go with millennials, and standing on business just means you mean it. It's like wallahi, like I'm on it, like I mean what I say. So I'm gonna go with millennials.
What is it?
You're from my research, Gen Z and Gen Alpha.
Mm.
But who
Really?
knows? I don't know if millennials were saying it. Maybe that could be a point of contention where it's like maybe it was earlier than people thought. But from what I saw,
Hmm.
Gen Z and Gen Alpha.
Hmm.
Okay, next one. Swole.
Oh,
I feel like that's recent, but I don't know. It's like, are you like swole? Like I'm big bod. I be hitting that. I be hitting the gym.
sounds like a shorter version of swell, which is a very, very old term, like the silent generation. Maybe the 1920s. I'm definitely sure it's not that. So whatever Rose said.
I'm gonna go with Gen Z millennial. Oh, actually, I want to say Gen Z alpha. I don't know, but I think it's big bod.
The meaning is correct, and it's millennials.
Mm,
Oh, that makes sense. They did have a few weird lingo out there. Okay.
Home slice.
What?
that
I
has
don't
to
know
be
any of
millennials.
this.
And home slice is like my homeboy, right? Like my friend. But
Yes.
home slice,
Just
I like millennial maybe. Millennial. I feel like they were saying homeboy,
yeah,
homie.
yeah. Maybe Gen X.
Bing, bing, bing,
I'm
bing, bing. Gen X.
okay.
Okay.
Good job, Shreya.
It was like home slice, homeboy, homie. Like we just keep recycling through them.
We just make him shorter.
Heebie jeebies.
Ooh, heebie-jeebies 80s. No, maybe the millennials.
It's heebie-jeebies is like, ooh,
Yeah, I know.
not nervous, but like, ooh,
Basically it gives you shudders.
yeah, like heebie-jeebies. It's creepy.
I use
I don't know.
heebie-jeebies, but I don't know who came up with it. It's definitely the older generation. It might be
I'm gonna go
Ryu.
with Gen X. Oop,
Maybe, yeah, yeah.
boomers. Boomers Gen X. That's my guess.
Mm.
From what I saw, Lost Generation and Greatest Generation. Because I can just
Oh,
picture, like, think about old Scooby Doo. You could just picture Shaggy being heebie jeebies or something like that, you know?
I
yeah.
don't know old Scooby-Doo, but I believe you.
God, they have said it in Scooby-Doo, heebie-jeebies. I think so. I think that's where I heard it first. Maybe.
I feel like it's a Scooby Doo coded phrase. But yeah.
Giving me the heebie-jeebies. Never mind.
But yeah,
Cut that
Lost
out.
Generation and Greatest Generation.
What's the Lost Generation again?
They, Lord, I'll look up the years.
I'll look it up. I'll look it up. Why
They
am I
are
asking you?
before silent, right? Because I think the
After
Yes,
greatest
World War
generation
One.
great.
is the greatest generation. Okay, so it's between, wait, what? So it's between World War One and World War Two? Yes, they had
Yeah.
some times.
Basically,
They
Sorry.
were
those who reached
lost.
adulthood
Yeah,
during World War One, so they were born before, so
yeah, that makes
late
sense.
1800s.
Next one,
Yeah.
Cowabunga.
Cowabunga! I have no idea.
Okay, this was in Teen Beach Movie, and Aminato was obsessed with that movie, and I'm pretty sure that movie was set in the like Greece era, so like the 60s, 70s. So I'm gonna go with Gen X, and it's like rock on, yeah,
Cowabunga!
cowabunga.
Woo! Like
It's
that, I
kind of like a
guess.
woohoo, yeah. So I'm
Yeah.
gonna go with like Boomers Gen X.
It
Or
is
like
an
it's like a
expression.
bazinga. Sorry,
Yeah,
go
it's
on.
like an expression of excitement. And millennials. It was
Oh.
popularized
Oh,
on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, like one of those old ones. Mikey used to say cowabunga.
what then? Was cowabunga on Teen Beach Movie? I think so. I may always
Probably
have that
it could
movie
have
on.
been. It
I've
could
Yeah.
have
noticed it
been.
before, but I don't know
Okay.
where. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe it's things that millennials said as teenagers
Gen
and they never
Alpha.
said it again. Aura
Yes
farming?
to
Cowabunga.
yes to both of y'all. Yes.
Okay.
Okay. This is Gen Alpha. Aura, it has to be.
Oh,
It
What
what
does
might
it
kind
be
of
mean?
is?
Gen
What does it mean?
like aura
Like
farming
your
is like recentering your aura or gathering good aura around you. That's what I'm assuming.
I think basically you're spreading it or you're giving aura to the room or something. You're lighting the room up. Something like that. Like it's a shit room and you're lighting it up. Something like that. I don't know.
It's like trying to look cool, but yeah, it's like you give off like this.
Exuding something. Exuding
Yeah.
charm. Yeah.
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 So when people are trying to look
Honestly.
cool, it's like, oh, you're aura farming.
Yeah,
I
that's just
feel
alpha.
silly. I feel silly. Okay. Next one.
Okay.
Cruising for a
Cruising for a
bruising.
bruising.
Oh,
Sounds
that is
so
a Teen
millennial.
Beach Movie song. That's Jen. It's literally called Cruising. If Ami was here, she'd do the
For
whole
a
dance.
bruising.
I'm gonna go for Gen X because that's like 60s, 70s. They were teenagers at that point. And it means
Oh, no,
like,
no, no. Gen X were not.
okay,
My bad. My bad.
okay. I'm gonna say Gen X, and I'm gonna say it's like you going out to hang out with friends, but more so there's like this subtle undertone of like we're going to get in trouble, cause some trouble. That's my guess.
Correct on the looking for trouble type vibe. And for this one, silent generation and baby boomers.
Ah. I can see them. I can see them. I can see Elvis saying something stupid like this. Yeah, yeah,
You're
yeah.
cruising for a bruising.
But
Mm.
Elvis was so prevalent with the Gen X. That's why I get so confused.
Mm.
I think it's because
Oh
his
wait, no.
first. No,
No,
I
boomers,
think he's much
sorry. Because
older.
my parents, yeah, Gen X is, I have to think. Gen X is my mom. But yeah, Elvis was boomers, not Gen X. It's confusing because he died when Gen X was born. Or yeah, when
Mm.
Yeah,
Gen X was
they
born,
were like
but he was
5.
prevalent for boomers. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Last one.
Go ahead.
Rizzler.
Rizzler. This I saw. I saw this while I was researching. I do not remember. It's Gen Alpha.
I actually
Correct.
don't think it's, is it really? Because so they took Riz to do Rizzler. We're
Very
not
cool.
creative.
Why
Like
are
we
we
literally just
associating with
recycle
that?
through. Because I
Yeah.
one of the questions we didn't answer was like how do we recycle? And I my answer was we just repurpose things. Like we just find something we're like, oh, this is what the new purpose is, and we do the same with words. Like it was
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Riz and now it's Rizzler.
Home
Very
slice,
cool guy.
homeboy, homie.
Me like
So
interesting.
yeah. Rizzler.
Somebody
Gen
was.
Alpha. Someone who has a lot of charisma.
Yay! I was saying cool. Charisma and cool. I guess
Mm-hmm.
they go together. I don't know.
Yep.
It's short for
Okay.
charisma.
Good job, guys. Y'all got most of them.
She did. I just guessed
Ooh.
my way through.
You got some too. I think what was confusing for me was the whole aspect of like, oh, I'm saying it's Gen X, but it really is impacting boomers because when Gen X is born, boomers are like this age. That's
Yeah.
confusing part. But yeah, pass it on
That was a lot of fun. Okay, so that's it for today's podcast. So until next time, stay curious.
Stay true.
and say unapologetically you. Bye.
Bye.